More and more people are getting diagnosed these days. And I'm not going to say we didn't have autistic or dyslexic kids before. We probably did. But, population grew. So did those kids. And everybody, the numbers kept increasing. So now we're naturally going to have more schools, more children, and more children with learning disorders. You know it, I know it, SEN is expensive. These therapies are expensive. They're okay, over here they're super expensive. They're expensive in Pakistan, they're expensive in Qatar. And from what I read, even in the US, it's expensive. Again, I don't know about every country, but generally I know that these are expensive, and the therapies and the assessments, they're very expensive, and most of them are not covered by insurance. There needs to be a system in place, which we don't have one. I don't think we have one yet. The schools are just getting used to of the idea that they will have students with learning disorders. Is there something? Do you see AI in future? Do you see robots in future? What do you see there?
So I see a number of things. On the one hand, I know where you are in not physically where you are, but I know that the path where Qatar is, if you like. The idea that kids with special educational needs need therapy is a stage on a path, and it is expensive, but actually it's not necessarily true. So when I was over in Qatar with Daniel Sobel and his delegation, what we're trying to do is we're trying to spread the word of inclusive education. Now, that's not expensive. Inclusive education is actually very, very good value. You save money, you make money, you get better grades. So instead of focusing on the therapy for the children, changing the children, it's about making education inclusive. And the fact, as you say, that there are more and more diagnoses for special educational needs should indicate to us that actually inclusive education is the way forward. Because let's say there's currently 10% of kids with special education, or 5% of kids with special educational needs assessments. Then in 2 years' time, there'll be 10%. Then in 3 years' time, 15%. Then maybe 20%. Well, one reaction to that is to panic and say, how expensive is the therapy? Another reaction is to say, well, okay, let's look at what we do when we educate these kids. Do we need to give them therapy? Or could we provide essentially free inclusive education in such a way that their well-being increases, their academic outcome increases, the school's academic outcomes increase, etc., etc., etc. So that's the first thing I'd say. And then I've forgotten the second part of your question. Forgive me.
Okay. No, that's okay. But so does that mean the PGC or the QTS or all those teaching certificates or the licenses, they should be updated and have more information about these learning disorders?
God, yes. Yes. I mean, I was talking to people in 2019. So it's fairly recently. And these were people in Central Europe. So the Czech Republic and Romania and Hungary. So these are people in Central Europe, and they were trainee teachers, and they were not only trainee teachers, they were trainee teachers in special educational needs. And I asked them how much training they'd been given in dyslexia, and they said none. Now this is crazy. This is crazy. There's a video I've got on my YouTube channel called 10-second interviews. And if you're looking for it, 10-second interviews, and it says something like 10-second interviews, Czech Republic, Hungary, or something. And these are people who do special educational needs teachers with no training in special educational needs. It's nuts. So of course, absolutely, the training that teachers receive must include training for special educational needs. It absolutely has to include that. And if it doesn't, then there are certain resources we have. So go to one of the websites that I have called the SEN Toolkit, SENTOOLKIT, sentoolkit.com. And it is essentially, it's very basic. It's not high level, but it's very basic online training in special educational needs and education for teachers. So basically training in inclusive education. It takes you through pathways that you might want to be interested in. So I want to understand dyslexia. I want to understand ASD. I want to understand ADHD, etc., etc., etc. And forgive me when I said ASD.
So ASD is, is a broad spectrum.
The autism spectrum, yeah.
And if you've seen, they say if you've seen one child with autism, you've seen only one child with autism.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very common saying. And now some of the autistic children, like everybody has a different, a different ability. You learn at a different rate. I learn at a different rate. We are all very different. How inclusive can we make education?
Well, think of it in terms of cats and dogs. I love thinking in these kinds of comparative terms. So if you see one cat, if you meet one cat, you've met one cat, because all cats are different. If you meet one dog, you've met one dog, because all dogs are different. But cats and dogs are different from each other. And we know the differences between cats and dogs. And so think of dyslexics are cats, people with autism or autistic people, autistic people are dogs, people with ADHD are bunny rabbits, I don't know, something like that. And they each have their own characters, they each manifest differently. But one of the things is that there are characteristics that unite cats, and there are characteristics that unite dogs, and there are characteristics that unite bunny rabbits. I hope that was a positive analogy. When I said autistic people are dogs, it sounded terrible, and I didn't mean it like I had friendly puppies in my mind when I said that.
But no, I get it. I get what you mean. Yes, right.
So we can be inclusive because we know, first of all, we know the neurology, and that's very important. So we know the neurology of dyslexia, we know the neurology of autism, we know, etc., etc. And second, we know, generally speaking, because of diagnostic criteria, we know where dyslexia manifests, and then because of a lot of other research, we know the positives of dyslexia. So diagnostic criteria seldom take into account the positives of dyslexia or the positives of autism. But we know that there are positives, and we know what the research says. And so what we can do is we can take the diagnostic criteria as guidelines for where we can help people who have challenges. And then we can take the rest of the research, which is very good research, as guidelines for how we can help if you like, how we can help target the things that people, generally speaking, can do very well. And so it is rocket science, but rocket science isn't difficult. Rocket science is remarkably easy, in fact. I'm not a rocket scientist, I don't know, but essentially you've got like a tube and you've got a hole in one end of the tube and force, and it forces the tube up. That's rocket science,